It is another episode of AmjamboTime. Thank you for all who help us to broadcast this unique program. I want to welcome our listeners in Maine and around the world. Thank you so much. We are privileged to have the Attorney General of the state of Maine, and we are going to discuss about one of the topic that is out in the news about the practice of immigration law by unauthorized people and unauthorized members of the community. And you are having a lot of community members coming out saying that they are having challenges with their asylum cases, either helped by people who are not authorized. We have seen the community organizations crying out for help, asking for support or interventions to just help in terms of educating the community, but also discouraging this issue that is going on in the communities in Maine. And this afternoon, we are lucky to have the Attorney General with us to discuss this serious topic. So I want to welcome you on the show. This is AmjamboTime show, and I want you to introduce yourself and what you do in Maine.
Well, John, thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to join with you and your listeners today. My name is Aaron Frey. I have the privilege of serving as Maine's Attorney General. I've been in this role for the last 5 years, and as you and your listeners probably know, the focus of my job is to provide legal services for the state of Maine, for the boards, the commissions, the departments. But more generally, it is my job overall to look out for the legal interests of citizens across Maine, which is what brought us into the issue that we're talking about today, which is we had received complaints that new Mainers, citizens to be here in Maine, scams by those who are not to provide certain legal operations. And so when we came to understand the extent of the issue, I saw it as my job as Maine's Attorney General to try to play a part in helping make sure that folks were protected from this unauthorized practice.
Wow. Thank you so much for responding to our invitation. Like you mentioned, can you take us into this issue, how big it is, what is the scope, what do you have in terms of cases or elements on this inquiry?
Yeah, so the state of Maine has a law on the books that protects individuals when it comes to accessing those legal services that are required to help apply for asylum, right? So the law in Maine is the Authorized Immigration and Nationality Law Assistance Act. It provides who is able to provide these legal services. So attorneys and certain individuals who have been certified under federal law. So these are federally authorized immigration representatives. So attorneys and these authorized representatives, they're able to help people identify the forms that they might need to fill out, to help them fill out the forms, provide answers, get them filed so that a person can proceed with very important immigration legal claims, right? Stepping to the side here for a moment, these are really important legal proceedings. In many cases, here in Maine, we have individuals who they've come to the United States, they're starting their life here in Maine. They're going through the legal process in order to ensure that they are able to stay here, right? To be free from the oppression or the risk to themselves and their families from the countries from which they came, right? There probably isn't much more important that they have to be concerned about than these legal services, right? Than this legal process that ensures that they'll be able to stay. So that's why Maine has a law on the books that ensures that whoever is providing the legal services to those who are applying in the immigration process, that they be qualified. So if somebody is providing these legal services that is not qualified, right? So if somebody who is not an attorney, if someone who is not a federally authorized immigration representative, if they're not qualified to provide these legal services and they are, that's a problem. because they're not supposed to be under Maine law, and they also, frankly, could be creating problems for the person that they're trying to help, because they may be providing bad advice since they're not trained to provide that advice. So what Maine law provides is if somebody is not authorized in providing these legal services, for those seeking asylum or those filing certain immigration paperwork, then Maine law allows the Attorney General to bring an action to stop this. So going back to the part of your question about, what did we hear? What are we seeing? What is it that had sort of got us to act? For the last couple of years, we had been hearing complaints from, those who had been victims of receiving unauthorized legal services, from folks who said they could help but were not able to help, were not lawfully providing the services. We heard from friends and family who said, that they knew somebody who, was not receiving the appropriate services under the law. We heard from different immigrant advocacy groups who, were telling us that they knew that this was going on out in different communities. They had heard about people providing legal services who were not qualified to those legal services. And as we spent time understanding what the extent of the problem might be, we learned more about how there were people who were losing money, who were losing valuable time to file the paperwork that they needed to file to secure their status here in Maine and in the United States. We heard about individuals who were scamming, right? Individuals who were holding themselves out to be something that they were not, which as a consequence was creating problems for, new Mainers who were doing everything they could to follow the law, but were being scammed by somebody who was not following the law. So, over the last 2 years, we've worked to identify the problem, worked to identify the extent of the problem, and understanding all of that, we have provided some resources on the Office of the Attorney General website to help make sure that, new Mainers understand their rights, have a resource by which they can understand what their rights are when it comes to accessing legal services or getting legal services when it comes to their immigration legal work. And we also wanted to make sure that the public was notified that they need to be on guard for scams that might be occurring out in the world. And then finally, I've been, my office and members of my team, myself, we've been working with and talking to different groups, victims, with the goal of helping to figure out how we can be more help in ensuring that folks are not scammed, that folks are finding a way to access qualified services underneath Maine law to help with their immigration legal needs, and to help make sure that if there are folks out there who are trying to scam other people, if there are folks out there who are holding themselves out to be somebody that they're not, we want people to know, hey, tell the Attorney General so that we can try to protect the public from those people.
Yeah, it has been like 2 years going into this, diving into the issue, getting some findings. So what are the common findings, the numbers of people who are scammed? Do you have those elements, or you don't realize how big the issue is so far, or you have some leads?
Well, we have a sense, right? So we although I don't have a specific number to give you, what I can tell you is that based on what we've learned from our contacts with those who are in the community experiencing these challenges, from advocacy groups that have been working with individuals who have been scammed or who have been vulnerable to a scam, who maybe were solicited by somebody saying, "Hey, I can help you with that," even though that person was not qualified. We have enough information to understand that this is a real concern. That one case that we did bring against a person who had been providing services that he was not lawfully able to provide. We did have numbers there. We knew that there were at least 20 plus individuals who had been scammed by that individual. We had evidence to show that there were many more who whose paperwork had been filed by this person shouldn't have been filed, and maybe their cases were impacted. So we had enough information to know that this was a real immediate concern, that it did require action, that it did require making sure people were on notice, A, of what their rights are, and B, how to be on the lookout for somebody who might try to take advantage. And by going out, by trying to educate the public about what Maine law provides, about what people should expect for their rights, my hope is that we will receive more complaints. Now that more people have the opportunity to learn about what is and is not appropriate, we're asking the community to let us know if you're being scammed, or to let us know if you've been the victim of somebody saying they could provide these legal immigration services, but we're not qualified to do it. So that's a long answer to your question, Jean, but really, we had enough information to know that this was a big concern, that we needed to take action, and that we needed to make sure the public was aware to be on the lookout and to let us know if they were experiencing a problem.
I think this person has been brought out. He's a pastor, and it's written all over the news. So how are you stepping in to also have a hand on other people besides him? And what would be the consequences for these activities and when it comes back to law?
Yeah, so a couple of different parts of that. First, when it comes to the specific individual that we have brought a case against right now for providing services that he was not lawfully able to provide, this is a civil action. And what I mean by that is, this isn't criminal. We're not looking to convict this person of a crime. This isn't something where the person's going to go to jail. It's nothing like that. What the action that we brought is doing is, one, getting a court order to stop this person from doing what it is that we say he should not be doing, that we believe the law says he should not be doing. There were individuals who paid this person money for something that he wasn't able to do. It's an opportunity to try to get some of that money back to the people who paid it but shouldn't have. But the other benefit of bringing a case like this, so it's not just stopping the person, it's not just trying to get some money back to help to help make whole the people who are victimized. It's also making sure, because these are transparent, this is a public case, it's to make sure that the public knows that my office is paying attention. And if there is evidence to suggest that somebody is taking advantage of other people in this way, we will bring a case just like we did for this person, right? So that's number one. Number two is we do get complaints, and we do everything we can to investigate, to track down what it is that somebody might be doing. Sometimes it turns out that these complaints are not warranted, that they were just a misunderstanding. Sometimes we learn that there may be a well-intentioned person out there who just didn't recognize that they maybe were doing a little bit more than they were allowed to do under the law, but they had good intentions about it. They really had a good heart about it. Nobody was hurt yet, right? So, we'll get these complaints, we'll investigate them. It may not lead to another action, but it will allow us to help determine if we have somebody out there who just needs to be reminded what the law is, and that they need to do something different, or it allows us to let somebody know who's making the complaint that actually this is okay, or actually this is not something you need to worry about. So what we do with complaints is not always to bring an action, but it might be to educate somebody who just started down the wrong path, or educate somebody who made the complaint that they don't need to worry. The third thing is, just wanting to raise notice. You've heard me say that a couple of times, but it's worth mentioning again. Across the board in my office, right? So my office, one of the busiest divisions that I have at the Office of the Attorney General is our Consumer Protection Division. And as you might guess, there's a whole number of different ways in which folks who are here in Maine could be vulnerable to a scam, right? So maybe it's something that they bought that, was not living up to a warranty that it should have. Maybe there was a, paving issue, right? So, whenever you have your driveway paved in Maine, there's certain laws that protect consumers that might not be followed. Telephone scams, email scams. There's a number of different scams that those who are seeking to take advantage of people try to put out there. This is no different, right? When somebody is trying to provide legal immigration services but isn't qualified to do it, that's a scam. We do a lot by just educating the public that they need to be on the lookout, that they have rights that exist. So like here, those who are in Maine have rights to certain types of services, like that, in terms of what kind of services they're going to get from somebody who's holding themselves out to provide those services. We want to make sure that everybody knows exactly what they should expect if somebody says that they, can provide them with legal services relating to their immigration claim. We want to make sure that consumers know exactly what they should expect when they're paying for that, or when they're agreeing to accept that from somebody.
I think it's okay to scare the those who are practicing that as well. I'm questioning if there is any way this can become a crime intent that can be punishable in a way. Is there any way that can be connected also, or it just limits to a civil litigation and that no criminal effects?
Well, I suppose, I can think of where evidence might lead down a criminal path, right? So if there's a certain type of theft that may, be involved in all of this, or if there was some sort of like assault, or, hitting somebody or restraining somebody against their will, there may be evidence that's generated as a part of these investigations where maybe the criminal system is, there is a crime that we need to be concerned about. But really the work that or the complaints that we've been receiving, the law that's involved here, the Authorized Immigration and Nationality Law Assistance Act, when it comes to the provision of these legal services relating to immigration claims, most of the evidence is really around who is able to provide it and who's not able to provide it. And so if we have a situation where somebody is providing these services, but they're not allowed to under the law, really the most appropriate solution, or the most appropriate action, is probably going to be civil. And that's going to be to stop them and to try to get back any money or fix any problem that they caused, when they were providing services that they shouldn't be. So, yeah, no, I can't. It's sort of hard to think of what a crime might be that would come from this. And again, by the way, when it comes to consumer protection, really what I want to do as Maine's Attorney General is just make sure that consumers know their rights, and that if their rights are violated, that we can figure out a way to make sure that those victims are taken care of. Because here, really, what people want, what consumers want, is they want somebody who can help them file their immigration paperwork, right? They want somebody who is going to help them with that process. So a criminal action against somebody who is, unlawfully providing these services, that doesn't solve the problem, right? I mean, stopping them from doing it does, but putting them in jail doesn't. What people need is just to make sure that they know their rights, and that they have, they know what to look for and they're protected against those people who are providing it but shouldn't be. That's really where the focus of this is, and that's the civil action that's available.
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, but I'm trying to think about the scary techniques or tactics they use, but also the trust you can have in your spiritual leader, for example, someone who is a spiritual influencer, like a pastor. So how that again comes to help the victim in terms of following up with the lawyers or legal assistance.
Well, so you are right about sort of the potential impact on victims of these types of scams, right? Because first, you do have a situation where somebody may be losing money. That so it sometimes costs a lot for these scams, so they're losing money. You have that their legal paperwork may either not be filed or may be incorrectly filed, which can have very significant consequences on the application, on their immigration application, right? So that those consequences can be very serious if they're scammed. And to the point that you just made, and we see this in other types of consumer violations as well. But when it comes to somebody who may hold themselves out as being able to provide these legal services relating, but they're not able to do so, they do hold themselves out in some other capacity. So you mentioned a pastor. The case that we've talked about a little bit already today. There was an individual who was not only saying he was able to provide services, but he had opened up a separate church where he was the pastor. And so he was using that relationship to, influence, those that he was saying he would provide their paperwork for them, right?
Yeah.
So it was sort of a mixed pressure. It was not only I need help to file my immigration, application or my immigration forms, and this person's holding himself out as being able to. It's also that person's my pastor, and he's saying, trust me, and I trust him with my spiritual well-being. Why wouldn't I trust him with my legal well-being? Because he's saying he can do it. Let me add one other thing, and this is in some ways what makes this of heightened concern for me, and I think heightened concern for others who want to make sure that the new Mainers, those who are filing for their immigration status, that they can be protected. I am sensitive to a number of these folks who are applying have come from places where you can't always trust the government, right? Where if you have a problem, you probably were not going to go tell a government official, because the government was likely persecuting you, right? That's the whole point of, particularly when it comes to an asylum application. The concern is that the government was not looking out for your best interests. So, the person who's a defendant in our case, I'm concerned that he knew that the people that he was scamming would not tell the government that they were being scammed, and so that he could get away with it, right? That is a concern that we have. Going to your point about sort of the pressure that may be put on people, the manipulation or the taking advantage of that's involved. So that's why it's important that people do make complaints to my office if they believe that they have been a victim of a scam like this, or they believe somebody has been a victim of a scam like this. It is why it's important that people know their rights and what to expect. And it also does play into, the more we know, the more information that I have, that my office has, that this is going on out there, the better able we're going to be to protect consumers, to protect new Mainers, to protect those who are applying for, an immigration status here in Maine, here in the United States, protect from that sort of that pressure. Because you're right, there are different ways in which scammers may apply pressure or may take advantage of a situation that make it that much more concerning.
Yeah, thank you so much. Let me come back on this the vulnerability that we see with this community. It comes also with the numbers of people we receive, but also the available infrastructure. So it's like, where do you want me to go if you don't want me to go there? So that's the question I want to bring to you, and see how you are thinking about it, or addressing it, or helping out.
Yeah, no, and that's part of our continued work, because as you've identified, it's important that people know what their rights are. It's important that people be protected from those who will take advantage of them. You can know your rights, you can be protected from scammers, right? But you still have the need for assistance, to make your immigration application, right? I think that's your point. What happens when you don't have access? Because the other thing too, by the way, is if you don't have access to, that help to file, to deal with the legal immigration paperwork, you might be more willing to just accept that somebody will help you who shouldn't, right? You might be that much more vulnerable because you're just looking for help.
Yeah.
So, we understanding that there are a lot of really hardworking people out there who are trying to provide these services, right? So I'll take, for example, we've met with a couple of groups, the Maine Immigration Resources Council, In Her Presence, Hope Acts. I'm going to forget to name a number of groups who ILAP, right? The Immigration Legal Advocacy Project. These are all groups who either have people who are providing legal services for individuals making, immigration filings, who are working to help refer out to attorneys or refer out to federally authorized immigration representatives, so that they can get help. But what we have identified is that there is still a need for more attorneys who can provide these services. There's still a need for more federally authorized immigration representatives who can provide these services. So because it's not going to be enough to just say, well, here are your rights, and protect you from the scammers, my office has been willing, or is working to identify different attorneys, different individuals who are willing to train up to be federally authorized immigration representatives. We have a little bit of money that we can use to help train folks up to increase the capacity, increase the number of people who are going to be able to provide those services. Now that's a little, it's going to take a little bit of time, right? Certainly, there's some, in working with those partners that we've been talking to for a couple of years now, we are working with them to find folks who can do this, B, are willing to commit to spend some time doing this in Maine and provide these services, C, are willing to train up, right, to attend the training, attend the certification classes that are necessary to be able to, provide these services in a meaningful way. So we're working to do what we can to help increase that capacity. But, frankly, this is going to be a continued effort, right? So, we are not, my office is not going to be able alone to help solve the problem of lack of attorneys who can provide these services or federally authorized immigration representatives. But that's one way in which we're trying to help. And conversations, by the way, I went out, did a town hall in Sanford just yesterday where I got to meet members of a New Mainer community who are going through this process. Met with a group in Portland last week, which constituted not only consumers but also representatives of advocacy groups for those New Mainers who are going through this immigration legal process. We are trying to be a part of the conversation on how we can make sure that when a person is looking to make their application for legal status here in the United States, they're trying to do the best they can to follow the law, that we are helping to identify those resources that can help them with that. It'll take a little bit of time, but at the front end, we're providing some resources that we expect will train some people up. So, in a not too distant future, there'll be a little bit more of an increased capacity to provide this assistance.
Yeah, I understand that. And again, I'm checking into the interim solution or interim help while we are bridging that gap. I think that there will continue to be a little gap in terms of matching the resources and the number of needs. I mean, is it okay for an arrival to stand and say, "Hey, someone can help me. It's okay. I don't care if they make mistakes."
Well, no. The reason being is that the law that I was talking about earlier that provides for who's authorized to provide these services, that law applies to the person who's providing the services, right? So, if somebody were to like, as you said, show up and say, "I'm willing to just allow somebody to help me out," the law will not impact them, right? So the law does not impact the consumer, does not prevent the consumer from agreeing to be victimized, right? There's no action I can bring to tell somebody not to be a victim. But the law does say who is able to provide it. And if you're not able to provide it, there's no exception underneath the law for somebody to provide services to a person who's consented. Now, I do want to provide, to your point about what in the interim, and maybe is there some pressure relief for those who are trying to work through their process today. So, a couple of things. One, there are guides online, what I'll call like self-help guides. So actually, just yesterday was looking at what ILAP, right, the Immigration Advocacy Legal Project, provides. There are forms in multiple languages, sort of how-to guides online that will help somebody understand how they can proceed with their own case. So if somebody shows up, they cannot find somebody who's authorized to help them, there is a resource that they could access that would provide a guide for them, probably in their native language, on how to proceed. The law that we've been talking about, the Authorized Immigration and Nationality Law Assistance Act, it does identify that there are some services that somebody who's not trained can provide that may be helpful. So, what is not considered to be a legal service, right? What is not considered to be prohibited is simple translation services. So, if they have a form, understand it because it's not, they can ask somebody to translate that form, to without having to worry about violating some law, right? Similarly, if somebody is trying to fill out the form but needs to have their answer translated directly into that form, then they can get help with that too. The law does not prevent somebody helping with that translation of the answer. What's important here, though, is the translation service can't be adding or can't be subtracting from what the form says or what the answer is, right? There's no advice being provided here, right? It's just, this is what the form says, this is what your answer is. So those services can be provided without fear of violating the act. Also, you don't have to, a person can help refer somebody to a resource, an appropriate resource, or can help the person get the form that they're asking for. So if a person says, "I need a form," I'm not going to get the form numbers right, but I need this form. A person can go get that form for them.
Hmm.
What can happen is the person who gets the form can't say, no, 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 you don't want that form, you want a different form, because that's providing legal advice, right?
Yeah.
So I say all of that because there are some things that are not legal advice related that the law recognizes can be provided by somebody who's not trained. The other thing I want to add here, though, sort of as an addition, is the Maine Attorney General office. We have a website. It's you could search it on Google, right? The Maine Office of the Attorney General, or you could just go to www.maine.gov/AG is the Maine AG's website. You go to our homepage, and there's a link right on our homepage that says immigration issues. If you click on that, it's going to have information about who can provide these services, what your rights are. We have a link to where you could maybe get a referral, right? Who's certified to provide these services, and so to point you in the right direction. And it also has information about what services can be provided that won't violate the law, like translation services, like, if you ask for a form, someone can go get it for you. So it's a way to do a plug for what it is that we have on our website, but it also recognizes that there are going to be some ways in which, maybe the pressure can be reduced on what a person needs to find, when they are sort of like thinking about how they're going to proceed.
Wow. Yeah. Let's take this moment to remind again our listeners who are newly in Maine what they should avoid in terms of when they are building their cases for asylum seeking. What should they be advised to avoid?
Well, I'm going to answer that question in a more affirmative way. So not what they should avoid, but what they should do, right? So,
Yeah.
First, a person should make sure they know exactly what things are when it comes to, what it is they have to do, right? What process they need to engage in. So there's going to be different groups, there's going to be different, online resources. There's probably going to be resource agencies who can also help somebody in the right direction. So what a person should do is don't waste any time, because there are some firm deadlines on how much time a person has to make certain applications. So they should get right to the process as soon as they can. They should seek out, and there are going to be members of the community, by the way, who can point them to somebody who is authorized to provide certain services, or who has information about where you can go get authorized services. And you should do everything you can to understand what you need to do in order to move forward in your case. Now, going back to your direct question about what you should avoid accepting services without confirming that those services are authorized, right? So if somebody comes up to you and says, I can help you with that, you should avoid saying, okay, until you know that that person is qualified to do so. They should avoid paying money over to somebody before they've confirmed that that person is legally authorized to provide that service. Because once you've paid money out, it's going to be awfully hard to get it back in. And also, and this goes to what you should do and what you shouldn't do, whenever you're filling out, answering questions, whenever you're filling out forms, always make sure that you're doing so truthfully and to the best of your ability. Because if you are not truthful, or if you're not, making good faith effort of the information that needs to be provided, that could come back and impact a claim if it's shown that you were not truthful, or shown that you were not acting in good faith. So kind of a mixed answer there, Jean, because it's sort of what you should do and what you shouldn't do. But again, know your rights. Do everything you can to understand what it is that you need to do. Seek out authorized help. Don't spend money until you've satisfied yourself that you're spending money on something that is authorized under the law. And don't be afraid to ask for help, because there are legitimate agencies, resource agencies, that are willing to be a resource to help get people pointed in the right direction. You don't have to do this alone. And there are authorized individuals out there who want to be helpful.
Thank you so much. Let me ask you this before, while I still have you on the call. There was a step to create a civil rights unit within the AG office. Do you have some updates to share with me?
Well, there was that effort in the Maine legislature, but because the Maine legislature has adjourned, for the end of the session, so it's not expected they're going to come back. That legislation did not pass, so that won't, the law that establishes an office is no longer moving forward. But this is probably more important. What's more important is my office is tasked with ensuring that Mainers' civil rights are upheld, that that people are free from bias-based hate, that people are not targeted, or that some types of crimes are committed against them based on ethnicity, race, gender, sexual identity, right? So there's a law in place that my office enforces now. I have people in my office who, if we get a complaint, we are going to work very hard to do everything we can to address any instances that demonstrate that a Mainer's civil rights were violated. So, I suppose the good news is we don't need to be called an office in order to protect Mainers from this bias-based conduct. What I will say is that it would be helpful on the education side to have more resources to educate people about what their civil rights are, and that to remind people that my office is prepared to do everything it can to protect them from bias-based conduct that's been directed against them. But I hope that everybody who's listening to this, and folks who are thinking about what just happened in the Maine legislature, I hope that you all know that every single time we get a complaint that somebody has been targeted because of their civil rights, that they have, in some ways, their rights have been violated, we're going to work very hard to do everything we can to hold somebody accountable if they did that, and to protect victims who've been targeted by bias-based hate. Also, by the way, we do have a civil rights team project here in the office that works with high schools, middle schools, to support civil rights teams. That these are teams of faculty advisors and students who they work together to elevate understanding about Maine civil rights. They do this in schools across the state. My office supports helping schools set these up. Is a good way to make sure how vibrant Maine civil rights protections are. And so, good news is my office can continue to protect Mainers from having their civil rights violated. We can continue to work with different teams out in the schools to give them the tools that they need to make sure folks are learning about their civil rights. I did support the establishment of the Office of Civil Rights within the Maine Attorney General's office. I'm going to keep working to make sure that my office has the resources it needs to be proactive, to be, to provide education, to be responsive when Mainers' civil rights are being violated.
Yeah, you mentioned a good thing to educate the community in terms of their civil rights. Sometimes the community wants to listen from the examples of real cases that happened before they come forward, before they feel like biased that nothing will happen if I take action on this. So do you have some cases to share before we conclude?
Well, we will every case that we can bring under the law, we bring. And so what this has included is, we've had some individuals who have threatened to hurt or even kill somebody else because of their race. We've had individuals who have spray painted either houses of worship or have spray painted symbols of like gender identity that have spray painted to damage those. We have brought Maine Civil Rights Act cases against these people to stop them from doing that. It's the same cases, right? We want to stop the person who's making threats against somebody because of their race. We want to stop somebody who is spray painting on houses of worship or who is spray painting and defacing signs that are inclusive signs. Those are, we had another case down in Portland that we had brought where a person targeted somebody because of their ethnicity and broke their car mirror. When we get reports like this, we can prove that a person targeted somebody else because they wanted to, because of the civil right, because of their race, because of their gender, because of their ethnicity, because of their sexual orientation. We bring that case. So those are the examples I can have of cases that we've brought. Again, it typically involves where somebody's targeted because, again, of their constitutional rights.
How do you move across the state? Because you have a case where someone from New Hampshire, a group of white nationalists, they intimidated a gentleman from South Portland and he resigned. So how do you connect with others to follow up with cases like this?
Well, we have really strong partnerships. So not only do we have resources here in the office that we're able to track down, to investigate different allegations. We have a tremendous relationship with the United States Attorney for the District of Maine. So the U.S. Attorney for Maine, Darcy McElwee, in her office, we work hand in hand. So because likewise, that office is also concerned when somebody's civil rights are being violated, if a person's being targeted, because of bias. So we work very closely with them. We will work with other attorneys general, other attorney general's offices, attorneys general's offices across the United States. So if New Hampshire, for example, is like you mentioned, there might be some investigation that needs to happen relating to conduct that maybe relates to Maine, but involves a group from another state. I will talk with my counterpart in New Hampshire, just like the U.S. Attorney for Maine might talk with her counterpart for the U.S. Attorney for New Hampshire. We have a lot of law enforcement, prosecutorial agencies who really are concerned about making sure that civil rights are not violated. So that's how we would be able to investigate a case if we get a complaint.
Thank you so much. And those are valuable insights that can help the community to be educated. I don't know if you have anything to add on the conversation we have, especially on this unlawful practice about immigration law, please.
I encourage folks to go check out the Office of the Attorney General website here in Maine. We do have translated into 5 different languages right now. We're working to develop more, but again, it provides information about rights, and it tells folks where they can go get referrals. It tells folks who can and can't provide certain services. And let me also add, and this goes to that last point, if you believe that you have been the victim of a scam, or if you believe that you have been targeted because of your race or ethnicity or gender or sexual, please let us know. Please call the Office of the Attorney General. let law enforcement know, because we really do have, we want to make sure that folks are not scammed, and we want to make sure that we provide protection against bias-based activity. So if you think you've been victimized in these ways, please do reach out to my office.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Hakuzimana, your host. We are at the end of today's show. Remember, the website amjamboafrica.com has a variety of great news, and you can pick up Amjambo Africa newspaper at stands like Hannaford, Burundi Cafe, the market on Lisbon Street in Lewiston, Coffee by Design, and many more places. Together with the entire team of Amjambo Africa, we thank you. Bye.